Before we bring Jon up here, we have just a few announcements that I need to get through so everybody's in the know of what's happening today. First and foremost, you can go ahead and follow Affiliate Summit on Twitter. So if you want to talk about the sessions, get to know where people are, network, follow up on news, promos, and whatnot, you can follow the hashtag ASW12 and at Affiliate Summit on Twitter. So go ahead and do that. There is free Wi-Fi. I don't know if that was... Yeah, first of all, here we are. Free Wi-Fi in all of the keynotes and the breakout sessions in the dining and networking areas. So if you want to hop on the internet, you can do that. The network name is Affiliate Summit, and the password is ASW12. That is case sensitive, so don't forget the old caps lock on that. If you're all about the social media, you can also check in at Foursquare. So check in at Affiliate Summit West 2012. See who's going to be the mayor. Edge out your friends. I don't know. Find out where everybody's at. You can do that. Looking ahead, Affiliate Summit East, the registration is now open. That's going to be held August 12th through August 14th in New York City at the Hilton. If you haven't been at that show before, it's really great as well. So go ahead and use that Wi-Fi. Register now. Take advantage of that early bird pricing. Speaking of Affiliate Summits, the shows are always getting better and better, and that's thanks to you and all of your feedback. It's really important. Every time you guys come into the sessions, you'll receive those little slips of paper, so just kind of fill them out, let people know what you think, likes, dislikes, what you'd like to see next time, suggestions, things like that. We always build off of that feedback. So there are going to be 10 people every day. They're going to win a gold pass to Affiliate Summit East. So a little incentives there as well. So over the 3 days, there's going to be 30 passes given out, so your chances are pretty good. Plus we're in Vegas, so you might as well take your odds on that. If you haven't already, also there is Affiliate Summit Forum. The registration is free, so you can, again, network and learn and kind of communicate with all your buddies in between the shows. So go ahead and check that out. It's forum.affiliatesummit.com. All right, throughout the sessions, if you're thinking you have some questions that you'd like to present, maybe you're shy, you don't want to get up and use a microphone, the sessions that you're in, they're going to have a slide up where you can go ahead and text or tweet or submit your questions via the forum. The information to do that is going to be in the session that you're in. So the code or the numbers are going to be unique to the sessions. So take a look for that in the sessions that you're in if you wanted to ask any questions sort of discreetly. All right, after the sessions are done, you might be thinking, hey, what am I going to do tonight? Go ahead and check out Affiliate Karaoke. I don't know, stretch your old vocal cords, let out your inner Beyonce. That's going to be a lot of fun. Going to be 9 to midnight here at Caesar's Palace, so you don't have to go anywhere, which is also kind of nice. You can check that out in the Neapolitan, rooms 3 and 4. So that should be a lot of fun. As you're walking around the halls, I don't know, you might be thinking, how many people are out here? There's 5,087. So this is fantastic. The largest affiliate summit to date, and you're all a part of it. So I think that's really exciting. The show is always growing and growing and getting better and better. So it's been a lot of fun to be a part of, for sure. All right, those are our announcements. Now we can bring up Jon Spoelstra. Before we do, I'm going to give you a little quick bio here. Jon spent most of his adult life running pro sports teams. He has been the general manager of the Portland Trail Blazers, president of the New Jersey Nets, and president of the Mandalay Baseball Properties. So with these jobs came a tremendous amount of travel. So on the road, Jon spent his time reading and writing and has since authored 5 books, including the Wall Street Journal bestseller, Marketing Outrageously, How to Increase Your Revenue by Staggering Amounts. The updated version of this book was just released earlier last year. He also penned a general marketing book based on his sports marketing strategies entitled Ice to the Eskimos. He's written a motivational book about developing passion in work and life called Success is Just One Wish Away. And his novel, Red Chaser, is a historical mystery set in the 1950s. Jon is now a writer, speaker, consultant, and a former judge of Miss America, which you really should ask him about because it's pretty fascinating stuff. So without further ado, Jon Spoelstra.
Thank you, Sarah. On my phone, my message is, leave your name and address, and I'll call you back in 24 hours. and I call everybody back, whoever calls on my phone. Whether I know the person or whether they're crazy or whatever, I call them back. Except 8 years ago, I got a call from a guy, and he gave me his name, and on the voicemail it said, "I'm the president of Miss America, and we want you to be a judge for Miss America. Call me back," and gave me the number. So I thought, which one of my friends is pulling a practical joke? And I'm thinking, would it be Bud? I thought, Daryl. I didn't call back as president of Miss America. And the 25th hour after he left the message, he called back and left another message and said, "You said you called back everybody within 24 hours and you didn't do it." I did call him back. He wanted me to be a judge of Miss America. It was a wild experience. Was there for 5 days. And I was stunned by the ability of the women that were competing. And one of the things that they had to do was there's 7 judges, and with the 7 judges you sat in the same sequence every time. So always on my right side was Greta Van Susteren, who's now with Fox. At the time I think she was with CNN. And Greta really knows politics. I really don't. But she really knows that's her job, to know politics. So like Miss Oregon, I live in Oregon, she asked Miss Oregon a question about politics, and I go, oh, wow. I mean, I had no clue what the answer was. So she asked that question, then it was my turn to ask, and I said, what are the names of your pets? I wasn't a tough judge. There were tough judges. Miss Texas comes up there from a small town in Texas, and Greta says, "You got capital punishment down in Texas. How do you feel about that?" There's no good answer to that. There's no good answer. There's 7 judges. And she says, "We sure like to kill them down there, don't we?" I thought that was a perfect answer. Greta was laughing. I punched in a 10 for Miss Texas. You know, when I wrote this book, Marketing Outrageously, and then the sequel, Marketing Outrageously Redux, I had to do some research on, a lot of it is about my experiences in pro sports, and I had to do some research on this, and I found out, I'd never realized this before, but I found out that I did my best stuff in a bad economy. I was most effective in a bad economy. When the economy was really bad, I was really good. And I couldn't understand why did my stuff was better in a bad economy. And of course, the economy we've got right now, I would consider a bad economy, and it doesn't look to me like, excuse me, it's going to get better in the near future. So I think what I'd like to talk about is what we did in a bad economy. Oops. Can you see those years, those numbers? Those in the back. Can you see those numbers? Those are years. Take a look at those numbers and in your mind think, which one of those years did I do something important? Did I start a company in one of those years? Did I get married in one of those years? Did I have a child in one of those years? Did I do something unusual in one of those years? Those years were all official by the federal government recession years. Those were the worst of times. And when I look at like 1980, I went out to move to Portland, Oregon, started off as a VP marketing of the Portland Trail Blazers. The economy was the worst it's ever been since the Great Depression. in Portland, Oregon in 1980. 1990, I went to New Jersey Nets. Any of you live in northern New Jersey, New York area? Raise it. Okay. 1990, there was a sign, a billboard outside on one of the tollways. It said, "Will the last company leaving town turn off the lights?" There's going to be 3 things I want you to write down today. Only 3. One of them is this: new is a way of life. And this came when in the early 90s, I was president of New Jersey Nets. How many of you, just by a show of hands, is your favorite team the New Jersey Nets? Two. You know, I used to give speeches in New Jersey to a crowd about this size, and I'd ask the same question, and I'd get the same answer. 2. When I was at New Jersey, it was a terrible situation. They had been dead last in attendance for 7 straight years. They had the worst record for 7 straight years. They lost money for 7 straight years. The Knicks were just about 6 miles away, which was the favorite team in New York. And we had to sell tickets and we had to sell sponsorships. And anybody that I would call on in northern New Jersey or New York, they knew about how bad the team was. So I decided to call on people in Japan. And I did this. I hired a Japanese national. There's a lot of Japanese American companies that are located in New York and northern New Jersey, like Sony and so forth. And if they had agreed to any sponsorship or anything over $100,000, they had to get permission from back in Tokyo. So I figured I'd go there first. Hired a Japanese national, and we'd go over there, and we did very well. And I got to know presidents of major corporations over there, like Toyota and Sony, Toshiba. And we sold quite a few sponsorships. In fact, in the early 90s, if you went into our arena, you might have thought that you were in Tokyo because there were so many Japanese company names. But with Sony, I'm out to dinner with the president at the time, Kunitake Ando, and I said, you know, your engineers must have a lot of pressure to come up with new products. Because you come up with a TV, and even when it's a breakthrough TV, somebody comes down with a lower price one 6 months later. So I said, your engineers must be under a tremendous amount of pressure. And he said, John, he said, at Sony, new is a way of life. If we don't do new, we die in the marketplace. I said, wow, can I write that down? And I brought on a piece of paper, and I wrote, new is a way of life. And if we don't do new, we die in the marketplace. And the flight in the wintertime back from Tokyo to New Jersey is about 16 hours if you catch the wrong winds. And I'm flying back, and all I thought about was new as a way of life in marketing. I wasn't thinking about other things, but in marketing. And of things that we did. And I realized that this is something that has to be ongoing. It's not just at a think tank meeting. And I'll give you for instance. You're familiar with the trifold brochure? Well, you guys are digital internet, but there are such things as a trifold brochure. It's an 8.5 by 11 piece of paper. And then they fold it up, it becomes a brochure. Every team in sports, without exception, this is their ticket brochure, a trifold. And I asked a friend of mine, Joe Sugarman, who made a fortune on blue blocker sunglasses. You guys remember blue blocker sunglasses? Well, Joe made a fortune on that, and he was in the catalog business. And I said, why don't you guys ever do the trifold? You always do catalogs. He said, well, trifolds don't work. He said, every catalog company has tried the trifold, but it doesn't work. He said it would be terrific if it did, because it'd be inexpensive, a single sheet of paper. We'd be able to sell our product on it, but it doesn't work. And I thought, well, every team in sports uses the trifold to sell season tickets or any tickets, and you ask them how effective they are, and they say, we don't pull very much. So we decided to do a ticket catalog. Now, this was 8.5 by 11. How many didn't get a catalog before Christmas this year? Raise your hand. Wow. There's 2 people. You guys didn't get a catalog? You live under the grid? You got one? You just moved, okay. Okay, this catalog, here's the first page. Rare first class opportunity. Look at all that copy. Does that sort of remind you maybe this is a website where you can really tell a lot of things? 6 years of the Nets being lousy can be a blessing in disguise for you. Big games only. We sold big games only. The best family deal ever. This was an 8-page catalog. We sent it out to a list that we developed ourselves of people that we felt would be Nets fans. It was essentially single game buyers that came up to the window to buy tickets for the previous year. We ended up sending out 70,000 catalogs. And for every dollar it cost us to send it out, we got $10 back. And in the direct response business, a 10-to-1 ratio is fantastic. People with the trifold were getting nothing. We were getting $10. So then we said, well, we better send out another one of these. And we sent out the same thing. Didn't change a word, didn't change anything. To the same people, the same list, except for the people that bought. And we sent this out, and for every dollar it cost us to print it and to mail it, we get $10 back. This is like printing money. So we decided to do it again. Same thing, $10 to 1. We ended up doing, the following year, we'd do 6 of these before the season, and our ratio stayed about the same. Now, I'm not saying for you to get into the catalog business. I'm talking about new as a way of life, of examining almost everything that you do, even the mundane things like a trifold. We looked at that and came up with a catalog. By the way, with all I think everything I've got on, I bought online. No, my underwear I didn't. You have to trust me on that. So everything I got, I bought online. Shoes, socks, pants, shirt, jacket. And yet, we get catalogs all over the place, and I didn't buy one from a catalog. So I'm assuming the catalog business is still a pretty good business, because by show of hands, this last year, did you get more or fewer catalogs? More or fewer? That's another thing. Teams, again, new as a way of life. Teams would spend fairly big ad budgets for TV ads and show the excitement. I always thought that was sort of frivolous, because if you're a fan, you know how the team is. You don't have to have somebody on TV, on a commercial, 30-second commercial, show how exciting the team is. We did direct response only. If we couldn't measure the responses, we didn't do it. This isn't from New Jersey. This is from, I got involved with the Mandalay Baseball Properties. It's got nothing to do with the casino, but Mandalay Baseball Properties, we own 7 minor league baseball teams, and with those teams, we marketed them, and we got onto running small ads. This ad right here is about a little bit less than a quarter page. This one was in the Dallas Morning News. Look at all that copy. That remind you of like maybe a website? With that ad, we ran in the Dallas Morning News, a lot of copy, headline, and here for every $1 it cost us, we'd get $4 back in the newspaper. Now in Dallas it was a little bit better, it was like $7 back. We're selling minor league baseball to buy baseball packages. I talked to friends of mine in the pro sports business in the major leagues. I'd say, how much money do you spend on advertising? And they'd say, well, we spend about $6 million a year. I say, wow, how many tickets do you sell? I say, we don't know. We do branding. Other teams spent millions on TV on branding. We use direct response only. Here's another one. This was down in Frisco, Texas. Santa's baseball secret. There's not even a picture. There's just a logo, a lot of body copy. We could run ads putting in the objections. We gave, why not buy later? That's an objection that we felt that people had. So we would put it, and we'd answer it in the ad. This ad would pull about a 7-to-1. We'd keep track of everything, every ad that came through. And this is, pre-really internet. What I learned was about 4 years ago, readership in newspapers was going down. So, and the readership on the internet, of course, has gone way up. But how do you get people to come to your site, if you're a baseball team, to buy tickets? So we felt if we would run small ads in the newspaper like that, but the sole objective was to get the person to come to a designated site or a page, which would be a ticket package, that we could increase our ratio. And that proved to be a fact. When we ran the newspaper ad and tried to get them to come to the site, I don't know if anybody, for instance, that buys a car that doesn't go online to look at more details about cars, about the specific cars. Who walks in with no previous knowledge into a car dealer nowadays? Well, I guess a sucker, because then you can really get taken. New as a way of life. How many of you have been to a minor league baseball game? One distinctive thing about minor league baseball, the outfield wall, there's usually about 60 advertisers on it. And they're usually about 4 feet by 8 foot signs. I think about the same size as a plot where you're going to get buried. But this is where your ad's going to be on the sign. We took advantage of technology, new as a way of life, and our outfield wall was an LED sign. The wall was an LED sign. But to take a look at the economics on this, a minor league baseball team that is very well run, they will make about $400,000 to $450,000 off their outfield wall. That's their largest source of sponsorship income. It's that outfield wall. So when you go to a minor league game and you see all those little signs out there, that represents $450,000. This is in Dayton, Ohio. Kroger's a sponsor. This is in Frisco, Texas. When we first wanted to get this, went to the LED manufacturer and said, I want the outfield wall to be an LED sign. He said, well, we got these ribbons, 3 feet that we put on fascia at ballparks. He said, we could do that, 3 feet. And I said, no, we want the wall. We want that whole wall to be a sign. This one's in Staten Island. Our typical team doesn't make $450,000 off of a minor league wall. We generally make $2 million to $2.5 million. And what we did was take something that's traditional, something that's standard, the outfield wall, say new as a way of life. How can we make this bigger, better? And the outfield wall was it. That's a pretty good view out there, isn't it, for that ballpark? How many of you bought the original iPod or close to it? How many of you read the new book on about Steve Jobs? There was a thing that just jumped off the page and grabbed me, that when Steve Jobs came back to Apple in his second tenure, and he wanted to make the Mac the centerpiece, control tower, so to speak. But they knew they'd have to have music. They came up with iTunes, but it was digital music. There were players out there at the time. Rio was one. And they said you only could put 12 songs on it. But he was looking at it that you could get music illegally off the internet and burn it to a CD on a Mac. And you could house it and store it in the Mac. That's what he was looking at. But they knew that they'd have to, the players out there, MP3 had just come out. We're talking about like 2000, year 2000, 2002. MP3s had just come out. But he went over to Japan, to Macworld of Japan, took one of his chief engineers, John Rubinstein, I think was his name. And John Rubinstein, well, Jobs goes to Macworld, Japan. Rubinstein goes to see Toshiba, to see anything they got that's new. And they go through the different things that Toshiba does. And at the end of the talk, the guy from Toshiba said, I've got a hard drive as big as a quarter. This will hold 1,000 songs. So Rubinstein was pretty impressed. He's having dinner with Jobs that night. He said, this thing would hold 1,000 songs. And voila, Jobs said, that's it. Before, you could get 12 songs. Some executives would say, who wants 1,000 songs? Why would anybody pay for 1,000 songs? So he said, how much is it going to cost? What's it going to take? Jobs asked Rubinstein, what's it going to take to get Toshiba to give us the exclusive for at least a period of time? And Rubinstein says, $10 million. Now, Jobs had the power and the glory, particularly on the second go-around there. He said, okay, do it. One of the guys at Apple who had worked at Philips was amazed, because he said at Philips it would have taken a year and had to go up to the board. But new as a way of life, Jobs saw the 1,000 songs. Now, he didn't know at the time, though, that he was going to reinvent an entire industry. I don't even have to ask for a show of hands here. I would think everybody has tunes on their iPhone, iPod, whatever. But he invented an entire industry. Then he got into getting the songs, the music. Here's Sony, who believed new is a way of life. Sony believed new is a way of life. If they don't do new, they lose. It went right past them. They didn't discover. They had invented portable music. They missed this one entirely. I think they got caught up in a lot of political activities, and they just didn't see it coming. So when Steve Jobs came out with the iPod, who would have predicted at the time that they'd become the number one seller in music, and that they make more money off of music than they do off of computers? And it all started as new as a way of life, where I believe that your antennae have to be up all the time. We used to have a think tank session when I was with the Portland Trailblazers, where I'd take the marketing staff to the Oregon coast and we'd think 3 days of just new things. I don't think that's sufficient. I think it's got to be all the time. Write this one down. What's it going to take? Steve Jobs asked Rubenstein, what's it going to take for us to get the exclusive on this quarter that holds 1,000 songs? How many of you are sports fans, pro sports fans? I'm going to tell you something that might disappoint you, but every year, whether it's baseball, football, basketball, or hockey, there's only a handful of teams that are even thinking about winning at all. Most of them think a little bit, let's get a little bit better. Or let's try to make the playoffs. When I was president of New Jersey Nets, Willis Reed, who was one of the top 5 nicest guys I've ever known in my life, Hall of Famer, played with the Knicks, he was now general manager of the New Jersey Nets. And the New Jersey Nets were awful. I mean, just awful. And our choices of players weren't terrific. Like we drafted number 1, a guy named Yinka Dare. By show of hands, who's heard of Yinka Dare? Wow. Okay, Yinka was a 7-footer. He went to school at George Washington University. He was from Nigeria. And Yinka set a record that will never be broken ever in the NBA. In 2,400 minutes played, Yinka did not get an assist. Now, for those of you that aren't NBA fans, you get an assist by passing the ball to somebody and catches it, and that person makes a basket. And routinely, probably about half the baskets that are made come from a pass. Well, Yinka played 2,400 minutes without an assist. I submit you could put a dead man down on the floor for 2,400 minutes, and he would get an assist. The ball would bounce off of him and come into somebody's hands, and they'd make the basket. I went to Willis Reed, the general manager, and I was the president, but I didn't have the power to select players. And I said to Willis, I said, what's it going to take for us to compete for a championship next year? And he looks at me like I was on drugs or something. So I backed off. I said, well, how about what's it going to take for us to compete for a championship in 2 years? And he said, well, money. I said, how much money? And he said, he started to look up in the ceiling. He said, "What do you mean?" I said, "Well, you said in 2 years, if we had more money, we could compete for a championship. How much more money?" I felt that was a fair question for me to ask, because that was really what I did, was the money. And he comes back and says $5 million, which I didn't think was a lot. And I said, "Really?" I said, "If we get $5 million more, we can compete for a championship in 2 years?" I felt we could do that. I felt really that we could get $5 million more. He said, "Well, not so fast." He said, "To compete for a championship, you need 2 superstars. And we only have 1. I said, "Who's ours?" And he said, "Derek Coleman." Derek Coleman was a fine basketball player, but his attitude was a little bit lacking. He wanted it written into his contract that he didn't have to practice with the team and wouldn't get fined. Well, this was in the era of Michael Jordan, where Michael Jordan was a tremendous practicer. So I went to the VP tickets. And I asked him, I said, "What's it going to take for you to have the best ticket selling department in sports?" And he said, what do you think he said? Money. What do you think I said? How much? He didn't have an answer. So I said, "Let me sit down on your desk there." And I sat behind his computer and I said, "Let's start listing some of these things, what we need this money for." No, when I do consulting with other companies, I'd ask, "What's it going to take for you to do this?" They say, "Well, money." How much? Nobody ever had the answer of how much. And when we got down to it with the VP tickets at New Jersey, we found out it was a nominal amount of money. We had to train the sales staff more thoroughly than anybody else. We had to pick better salespeople, so forth and so on. But it's something that we could do, and it didn't cost us hardly anything. When they asked Steve Jobs what's it going to take, when he asked what's it going to take, it turned out to be $10 million, and he did it. In most cases, or was it worth it, that $10 million? In Dayton, this was 12 years ago, and we started a team in Dayton, Ohio, the Dayton Dragons. Anybody here from Dayton? You go to Dayton Dragon games? You can't get a ticket. Dayton, down there 12 years ago, and somebody said in the history of minor league baseball, 100-year history of minor league baseball, no team had ever sold every ticket to every game for a season. I said, "Really? No team had sold for an entire season?" They said, "Yeah." And then I said, "What's it going to take for us to sell every ticket to every game for a season to minor league single-A baseball?" And we sat down to write down what's it going to take. But we set that our goal was to sell every ticket for every game for the entire season. That was 12 years ago. We sold every ticket to every game that season. The following season, we did it. The season after that, we did it. They've now done it for 11 straight years. They've sold out 900 straight games in Dayton, Ohio, to minor league baseball, 7,500 people per game. They passed a record, past the Portland Trail Blazers, who in my era there, we'd sold out the most games in a row. And they're still selling it out. So if you want to go to the Dayton Dragons game, just email me. I know somebody there. I can get you tickets. Last thing I want you to write down, push the outrageous envelope. When I was in New Jersey, I went to lunch with a guy named George Lois, famous ad writer. He's written several books. One, George, Be Careful. He's just a great ad guy. He did the original Volkswagen ads years and years ago. And we're having lunch, and George says to me, he says, John, he said, your New Jersey Nets are awful. They stink. They're lousy. What are you doing to try to improve their image? And I said, well, we're working at it. He said, well, I got an idea for you. I said, what's that? He said, jock straps. I said, what do you mean jock straps? And he said, give a jock strap to every man, woman, and child that comes to the game next year. And he said, you're going to have people talking about it. Kids are going to think it's a slingshot and be firing things away. Women are going to take it to work and drop it on some guy's desk. But people are going to be talking about the New Jersey Nets instead of how lousy they are. But then if you go to the game, you get a free jock strap. Now, George said this with not a smile on his face. But there are some things that intimidate me. And here's something I've learned over my years is that there's a ton of naysayers out there. By show of hands, would you raise your hand if you don't know a naysayer? See, I got it where at least the New Jersey Nets got 2 hands raised. So here's what I did with that idea, that with a really crazy idea like free jock straps, I think that it has a chance. In fact, we had a guy at the Portland Trailblazers, Mick Dowers. We go to these think tank meetings. He was the best I've ever seen at coming up with bad ideas. I mean, this guy could come up with awful ideas, and he did it routinely, and he believed in them, and he thought they were good ideas. And he'd get laughed at by everybody until we figured out that when Mick Dowers came up with one of his awful ideas, that if we flipped the idea and did the opposite, it was a pretty good idea. So jock straps. I got a little bit intimidated about it. Went back to my office, got into my office, locked the door to my office, sat down at my desk, and I wrote on a piece of paper, free jock strap to every man, woman, and child that comes to the game, period. And I put that in an envelope, number 10 business envelope. And on the envelope I said, free jock straps. And I sat down at my desk, and I put my hands on that envelope, and I started to push it across the desk. Started to push it. And it's interesting that you start to get at least I do, get the feel for what naysayers are going to say. Maybe it's the physicality of just that envelope gets me thinking what naysayers are going to say. Because, the worst thing you can do when you come up with a good idea is go to anybody. Go to a workmate or somebody, a spouse, say, I got this great idea. Let me tell you. That person, uncharacteristic or not, will come up and put slices into that idea. The worst thing to do is go to your boss. Say, I come up with a great idea. They'll whack that. I found out, by the way, the older I get, and I'm getting up there, the older I get, the dumber I get. The saving grace on that is I'm not going to get much dumber. So if you come up with an idea and you go to your boss who's older than you, that boss has gotten dumber. They know how to be a naysayer. So when I get that envelope and I push across, physically push that envelope, I'm starting to think also of things I got to do before I tell anybody about this idea. I call up Phil the Chinaman. Phil did our tchotchkes. We bought 100,000 New Jersey Nets baseball caps from him for 91 cents each. And I thought they were terrific hats, unless you left it on the ledge of your car in the back seat during the summertime, because the hat melted. But it was a winter hat. Go to Phil and I said, Phil, I want to hand on a jock strap to every man, woman, and child that comes to a game next year. I said, I project we're going to do 500,000 tickets, so I'm going to need 500,000 jock straps. And Phil says, and by the way, on his business card it said Phil the Chinaman. So I don't know his ethnic thing or what, but Phil the Chinaman, I say to Phil, he says, well, he said 500,000. He said, not like half. Everybody make hats. Nobody make jockstrap. By the way, I bought a jockstrap on my way into work so I could give him a sample. He comes back to me like 2 weeks later, and he said, $3 per jockstrap. We're paying 91 cents for the hat that melts in the car. And I said, well, why $3? I said, the jockstrap is nothing but air. And he says, nobody make jockstraps. Too many stitches. So I thought, well, that's $1.5 million. $500,000 or 500,000 tickets times 3 is $1.5 million. I said, we can't afford that. We'd rather spend that on a player that can't play. I said, what about the beginning of the season? We've got 4 games in November. I might be able to do it then. That'd be, let's say, 40,000 tickets. That'd be $120,000. I might be able to get away with that. He said, oh, November, not enough time. I said, what do you mean? We need 90 days for hats. We got 5 months here. And he says, we need 7 months for jockstrap. Too many stitches. So then he said, how about playoff? Do jockstrap for playoff. I said, Phil, do you know who you're talking to? We aren't going to be in the playoffs. I bring this up. I never did the jockstrap. But I bring it up. It is a humorous story about jockstrap, but I bring it up because when you push the outrageous envelope, that it is beneficial when you come up with an idea before you go to somebody else with the idea. You really have to vet it yourself and vet it some more, and then go to somebody and collaborate. But you would have already thought of what the naysayer is going to whack you with. Do you know who that is? Can you imagine the boardroom of Aflac when a highly conservative Southern company, and they come in and they say, we want to have a crazy duck represent us. Does anybody know what Aflac means? Try this. American Family of Assurance Company. A family life assurance company. Aflac. Can you imagine the board of directors saying, are you kidding? A stable company like ours with a lot of tradition, you want a crazy duck to represent us? If you look at Aflac, since the duck came out, the sales have been like that. I would consider the duck pushing the outrageous envelope. I think we're going to have time for some questions, but I want to cover Anybody know what that is? Years ago, like I would say I was in my 20s, I mean a lot of years ago, I was a young salesperson, and I'm sitting in the lobby of some place I was calling on, and I'm going through a magazine, and I read about Greek mythology, and where Pegasus, this flying horse, represented opportunity. And there's some things you'll find as you grow older, that there's things that pop back occasionally. I'm not saying every day or every month, but every other year sometimes. And this Pegasus thing, opportunity would pop back, and I'd think, Jesus, horse with wings, that's sort of cool. I'd like to get on that horse. I mean, I think that would be fun. And I know that there's been times that I've missed opportunity where that horse just flew right past me. And I go, wow, what was that? And I realize, oh, there's that damn horse. I realized, though, that if I knew as a way of life, I asked the question regularly, what's it going to take? And if I pushed the outrageous envelope, opportunity came to me a lot easier than I ever thought it could. The horse would kneel down, I'd get on the horse and ride, and it's been a terrific ride. So I think we've got anybody's got a question? Do we have a microphone, or do you here comes a microphone. It's for the other people, I can hear.
What happened with the jockstrap?
I never did it. I could have done it the next season, but I'd lost my enthusiasm for it. What I do in place of the jockstrap, actually it was really boring, fundamental stuff. Like we hired 20 salespeople right out of college, and we trained them, put them into a 7-day boot camp. We did all just really fundamental things. There wasn't anything crazy. They had to buy their own.
If I were Adam Aaron, the CEO of the 76ers, the new ownership group,
Right.
what would you tell me? What would be the one thing you would tell me as a consultant?
Sign LeBron. Actually, in my lifetime, there's been a few players that could sell tickets like crazy. Michael Jordan, obviously. LeBron. Shaq. I think you got to do something that's really fundamental on selling tickets. I get that NBA League Pass. We get all the games on TV, and I'm just amazed at the empty seats. But it's just fundamental of going at it one ticket holder at a time. Yes.
What's an example of something outrageous you did that worked?
Well, I don't really know how to classify that, because a lot of the examples I've given here, like Miss America, I thought it was pretty outrageous when I asked Miss Oregon what are the name of your pets. Individually, oh yes.
I was thinking back to the direct response with the newspapers and the catalogs, and you got me thinking because I'm an affiliate. Is there any big opportunities that you see with the newspaper industry or other direct response industry where rather than me paying for my ads online, I take it offline?
Well, I would imagine that an important part of your business is getting names and addresses, right? I found I've never been that good at selecting for sports teams lists where, like American Express, you can buy the American Express list and send a ticket package. I've never been effective at that. I have been effective at building my own lists. Well, as a sports team, we had benefit over any of you is that we would get people to call up and ask for a pocket schedule. This is in 10 years ago. And they'd call up and want a pocket schedule, and the team would put it in an envelope and mail it to them, where they'd have their name and address and phone number. We just worked a lot of different ways of how can we get names. And the ads that we ran later on were to drive the people to our website for the sole purpose of getting their name. And we had different ways, like on the game program, we featured different ways of going to our website. But we had to get people that weren't going to the games that come to our website, and that we could get them to do something. So that's why we used the newspaper ads, but we regarded it as direct response, and we measured everything. And I'll tell you this, if you run an ad, any place, but if you run an ad, and it pulls the ratio that you want, I think 4-to-1 in newspapers is difficult to get nowadays. I think it's probably 3-to-1 is pretty good. But 3-to-1, by the way, is terrific, because your renewal on these in tickets is about 80%. Well, you don't have to pay anything. But if an ad pulls 3-to-1, keep on running it until the readers tell you to stop. How do they tell you to stop? Stop buying. We ran this one ad, Is This Heaven in Dayton, for 17 straight times, twice a week, no more than that, twice a week. And the president of the Dayton Dragons said, can't we get rid of that ad? I'm so tired of that ad. And I said, sure. And I wrote a different ad, which I thought was even a better ad. It didn't pull. Instead of pulling 7-to-1, it was pulling 1-to-1. He said, what do we do? I said, go back to the first ad. I think that's just about it. Maybe one last question. Well, we had the first thing, we hired these young people right out of college. And we put them through a 7-day boot camp, which, if I was one of those people, I would have quit. I mean, it was really, really difficult. So we really trained these young people for success. And, since that time, the original group in New Jersey, they're the titans of the industry now. So I think it was training the young people that we had, and then the continual training, because we were hiring 22-year-olds, 23-year-olds, and we had to train like all the time. And we came up with different ticket packages. Like one of those ads I showed you had a 5-game plan, where it was our 5 best games, because we were trying to get sellouts. So we did different things to the marketplace. Some of that stuff you can find in any of my books. So that does it. You guys have been great. I thank you very much, and see you around.